Hi. Hi, welcome. This seems very low, but I'm sure it's fine. Welcome everyone. I'm Kirsten Hillman, Canada's Ambassador to the United States. Thank you for being here. I was very happy to just greet the Prime Minister at the airport a moment ago, or about an hour ago. We've got obviously a lot of really important meetings here in Washington. The NATO meeting is a little later this week at a time that is critical and important for the alliance. But also we have a number of bilateral meetings with our American friends, members of Congress, members of the administration, business groups, labor groups, and other American allies. So it's going to be a busy and full few days, and we're happy to have you all here.
Madame Hillman, est-ce que c'est un peu gênant pour le Canada d'aller à un autre sommet de l'OTAN sans avoir de plan pour atteindre la cible de 2% en matière de dépenses militaires?
Je dirais pour moi, ici, comme ambassadrice auprès des États-Unis, que les discussions que j'ai sont primairement avec les Américains et l'administration américaine, la colline. Et je peux vous dire certaines choses là-dessus. La première chose, ce qu'on me répète, c'est que les Américains apprécient la trajectoire dans laquelle nous trouvons, une trajectoire en hausse dans nos dépenses. Deuxièmement, le DPU, le projet de défense qui vient d'être mis par le gouvernement, met l'emphase sur l'Arctique et le Moyen-Orient. Et là, les Américains, encore une fois, ils sont très appréciatrices de ça, ils apprécient beaucoup. Parce que ce qu'ils attendent souvent de leurs alliés, c'est que leurs alliés mettent l'emphase sur des choses où ils ont des capacités et les habilités qui sont leurs propres habilités. Et là, c'est notre territoire un peu en commun avec les Américains, alors ça, ils apprécient beaucoup. Alors ça, c'est très important. Et je dirais aussi, et ça depuis quelques mois, j'entends ça de plus en plus, c'est le leadership que le Canada a toujours démontré vis-à-vis l'Ukraine et l'agression russe en Ukraine. Là, les Américains comptent sur nous. Ils comptent sur nous de rester forts et surtout peut-être dans les moments où dans certains pays, il y a certaines voix qui sont un peu moins fortes qu'on aimerait. Alors ça, c'est vraiment important pour nos collègues américains.
My understanding is that the Americans are sort of losing patience with Canada and not, mapping out sort of a roadmap for precisely how or when they reach the 2%. How is Canada going to sort of explain itself, when it comes under pressure this week from the Americans and probably from other alliance members?
Well, I guess just to say what I maybe a little bit to repeat what I just said in French, with the Americans, there's no question that they are looking for every country to step up as much as they can. And the conversations that I have focus on the fact that they are, in particular, deeply appreciative of the trajectory we're on, the upward trajectory, the precise focus that we have on, in particular, the Arctic and our homeland and ensuring that we have the necessary capacities up there and the capabilities up there. And also our steadfast support for Ukraine, right? And we were there from the beginning, and we have been one of the most vocal and supportive countries, if not the most vocal and supportive within the alliance. And that is a role that we can play that the Americans value greatly, because I think we all know that there are some voices in Europe and even here in North America that are questioning whether or not that continued steadfast support is where we should be. And Canada obviously believes that that's exactly where it should be, and we force that conversation and we press as hard as we can, and we will do so this week.
Ambassador, how does Canada explain to allies why it's unable to even come up with a plan for 2%? When you're in meeting with those diplomats, NATO allies, what are you telling them? They have openly criticized us. What do you say? Is it because of our domestic policies? Is there pushback, you think, from Canadians who may not support 2%? What reasons do you give for not providing a plan?
Well, I think we have to recognize that Canada has made enormous progress in the last number of years, right? We started from a point, I think 6, 7 years ago, maybe 7, 8 years ago, where we were at 1% or below 1%. So with an economy the size of ours, the expenditures that are required to get to where we need to be take time. And also we want to do it in a deliberate way, right? And we want to do it in a way that makes the investments in areas that are going to make maximum benefit for our allies. And so we talk about that. I am not saying that the pressure that you recognize isn't there. It is. But it is also coupled with a strong recognition that Canada is a steadfast ally in all respects, and a confidence that we will continue to be among the most effective allies in the alliance.
Ambassador, have you met with the bipartisan group of U.S. lawmakers who wrote the open letter to Canada? And what is it that you've said to them to try and assuage their concerns?
So I haven't met with them as a group. I have met with, there's a caucus in Congress called the America-Canada Economic and Security Caucus that is bipartisan, bicameral, and they focus on both economic and security issues. And I meet with them regularly. And I've met with a number of the senators that were in that joint letter who are also members of the ACES caucus. And the conversations we have are not one track, right? I mean, this isn't an issue of just focusing on a number all the time and only that number. We are sophisticated countries with many policies that we're seeking to develop and many ways in which to contribute to not only our homeland security, but the security of our world. So the conversations are not one note. They are complicated, they're serious, and we are taken very seriously there.
Come away satisfied with your explanations and with Canada's?
I think they come away with a strong understanding. I think that the United States will always want all of its allies to do as much as they possibly can. I don't think that that's going to change, but I always come away, and I say this because this bilateral caucus that I was talking about, bicameral, bipartisan caucus, that was a creation of U.S. Congress, and it was a creation of U.S. Congress in order to find ways to highlight and double down on the security benefits that the Americans have by being our neighbors. So it was created precisely for these positive reasons. So those conversations, I'm not saying that there aren't issues where we talk in depth about ways in which we would each like each other to do different things, or in a way that is not exactly the way that is unfolding on either side. But the whole premise of the relationship is that together we are, and because we are neighbors, more resilient, stronger, and safer. And so that tends to be the type of conversation that we have without shying away from expectations and talking about expectations.
Mais est-ce que vous craignez un isolement diplomatique, surtout si un retour de Donald Trump à la Maison-Blanche? Parce que lui, il a dit clairement, moi, je ne vais pas, par exemple, défendre mes alliés de l'OTAN s'ils ne paient pas le fameux 2%. Donc, est-ce que vous craignez que le Canada soit isolé? Non.
Le Canada se trouve, de mon point de vue, là où je suis, au centre de chaque discussion qui est importante pour nous, pour nos intérêts du Canada et nos objectifs. Alors ça, je ne crains pas, et c'est parce que le fait que nous sommes tellement interliés avec les Américains et avec tout ce qu'ils font à travers ce pays, où qu'ils se trouvent, et quoi que ce soit leur alliance politique, ils mettent beaucoup d'emphase sur la relation qu'ils ont avec nous. Alors, je ne crains pas du tout. Au contraire, ils sont en train d'essayer de trouver des moyens pour renforcer ces relations.
Mais c'est pas honteux que le Canada, juste en français, juste another one in French. Est-ce que c'est pas un peu honteux que le Canada soit le seul pays à ne pas avoir de plan pour le 2%?
Moi, je suis très fière du Canada. Moi, je suis très fière du fait que nos alliés ici et dans l'Alliance reconnaissent que nous sommes, par exemple, et ça a beaucoup à voir avec les thèmes de la semaine de l'OTAN, nous sommes les défendeurs les plus forts de l'Ukraine. Nous ne bougeons pas là-dessus. Il y a certains qui se demandent, peut-être on devrait avoir un peu moins d'emphase sur cet enjeu. Mais nous sommes toujours là pour pousser, comme on dit en anglais, l'enveloppe. Là, je suis très fière de nous. Je trouve qu'on a une leadership qui est essentielle.
Does it not concern you, though, that by not contributing 2%, you're strengthening the hands of politicians in other countries who want to weaken NATO? And who can then point to countries that they call delinquent as an example of why NATO isn't working for them, and that therefore in the long run you're undermining NATO.
So I'm not the NATO ambassador, and I think those are questions that are probably best placed for those. But what I will say is that there are allies in NATO who are meeting 2% who do not support standing up for Ukraine and Russia. I think that's a point that deserves emphasis.
Ambassador, I'm meeting tomorrow with Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. Can you describe what the objectives are for those meetings? What are you looking for? Are those
And Mitch McConnell.
Oh, Mitch McConnell. Okay, I was going to ask what kind of outreach there was to the public.
Yeah, we're meeting with a bipartisan group in the Senate, a leadership group in the Senate, from the relevant committees and the two leaders. In the House, we are meeting with Hakeem Jeffries because the Speaker wasn't available. We're trying to set up something in the near term for the Prime Minister and him to get in touch, but it's a busy week. So the objectives there are sort of essentially to talk about how this relationship is working, which is, by the way, all-time historic levels of trade and close to historical levels of integration in the history of our two countries, that is founded on a strong and stable and predictable rules-based system that we have with the new NAFTA, the CUSMA, and how we can work together to make sure that we make each other more resilient. And the U.S., and in particular our colleagues on the Hill, but also in the administration, they're very, very interested in ensuring that where Canada can partner with the U.S. and the U.S. can partner with Canada to make ourselves a little less vulnerable to some of the volatility that we've seen in the world in supply chains due to conflict, due to weather, due to all a variety of different forces. What can we do with each other? So we'll talk about that.
A little bit vague, those topics, but anything specifically on EVs and
EVs, critical minerals, energy transformation, green technology transformation, energy self-sufficiency. I would say we often talk about ways in which we can reinforce business ties. We talk about how we keep our perimeter safe. We talk about the Arctic. We'll talk about Canada's DPU. We'll talk about the ways in which we're doing stuff up there together. So we'll cover the waterfront.
Ambassador, can I ask you a question? Sorry. You mentioned that Canada does a lot that NATO appreciates. But the reality is we're increasingly being cut out of subgroups and organizations that the Americans are working with other allied countries on. We also don't have the same capacity we used to, whether it's sending the fighter jets or ships. We've had to actually pull back because we don't have the equipment. Does that come up with meetings? It's not just about the 2%, but it's also, and I know we're in Latvia and all that, but that it's also about our ability to contribute troops on the ground, which we used to do a lot more.
Well, and then I would point you exactly back to the DPU, right? The 88 F-35s that we're buying, the fact that we are buying the P-8s, the fact that we are working on over-the-horizon radar systems, the fact that we're going to look into submarines, we're going to look into helicopters, we're trying to replenish our forces, by the way, which are all challenges that the Americans and most of our allies have as well, right? We are finding ourselves in a moment in time where having the equipment necessary to do what we need to do around the world is a challenge. So we talk about all of those things, but it is not a Canada-specific conundrum. It is a conundrum and a challenge that we're all facing together.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have. Thank you, Ambassador.